Hello everybody, Ryan Carpenter here with No BS Golf, presented by P45 Knuckle Down Golf. Hope everybody's having a fine, Friday? Yeah, Friday, coming into the Masters here in a couple weeks. Got spring going, weather is popping, it's golf time, excited. And as normal, kind of started my day going through and looking at a whole bunch of stuff on the old, internet there. And, I'll make this a quick one today. For the most part, I watched a video, and young fella teaching some golf out there, it looks like, and hadn't heard of him prior to today, but I'm sure he's popular and all kinds of good stuff. He's got great content. Anyhow, watched this video, and really good stuff. Great information, and was spot on with basically explaining, why this is important and then why that's important, and a lot of it was mostly focused around what's called low point. And low point, if you've ever seen, the way slow motion a club, for a great player, tour pro, obviously, great players, hit the ball first, and then the club continues to go down into the turf a little bit lower and stays low for a long time, taking that big old divot, right? That divot's in front of the golf ball, target side. And then the divot flies and the club comes back up out of the turf, right? For those that take those big divots. Not all do. But anyhow, low point. So when the club reaches the lowest point in relation to turf, right? Or, the ground, whatever you want to call it, below the ball, resting level, whatever. There's lots of ways to describe it. But the point is that great players happens way ahead of the golf ball, out on the target side, Whereas, with the exception of maybe just a small grouping, a handful of, amateurs, recreational golfers, that low point happens prior to the club smacking that ball. And for the really, really troublesome players, it happens sometimes an inch, 2, 3 behind, away from target, behind the ball. Those fat shots, right? You lay the sod over it, that term, right? That kind of stuff. And so that was the main point. But then he started, it was content heavy is what I call it. Good information, great information, spot on. But boy, and he was right. He got into talking about, okay, but when you're doing this, you can here's the easy way to do it, but that becomes a problem for ball flight issues and hitting this and hitting that, and so you got to also make sure you're back here doing this first, and then it's got to be right here, and then you got to do that, and then you get to this part. Well, that's where it got a little complicated. And even though he was connecting the dots real well, because he was, it's that when you get content heavy, that's when these things become problematic. Because while I can digest everything that was going on there real easy and simple, you got to think about the possible thousands, millions. I don't know how many hits he gets, whatever. Let's say millions, right? Because that's what we're all trying to get. And but the millions of eyeballs that might see that, they all have different levels of comprehension right now in the game of golf. In fact, when I was doing the free demos at www.thegolfpub.com, the new location I partnered up with to teach out of, and when I was up there doing free demos, I actually covered this a little bit with a few students, but immediately after talking about it, 20 minutes, it ain't that much time, I immediately said, look, this is just an idea, a demonstration of something that I might work on with someone, but you got to understand that for all players, there's a certain point in time that we would elect to actually work on this with a player, for one. Two, it's because there's a lot more to it than just this today. There are other things that would need to be learned, developed, coordinated in conjunction with this one skill to make this one skill work. And so I gave that warning. I said, after today, I wouldn't go try this. I would just play your game. Maybe later, if you decide this is something you want to learn, come back. We'll talk about the entire golf swing in the first lesson. We'll go through everything that's going on, and I'm going to connect the dots so that you kind of understand, well, here's the first thing, and that leads to this, and then this leads to that, and that. There's a little chain of events that go on in golf swings. Pardon me. And that's what's missing from these types of videos on purpose, because, they don't want to go into that realm. I do. And so I actually covered low point, and we had a little, here's how to do it, here's how I would develop it if you were in this phase of the process right now. But that's what's missing, or if it wasn't missing, the problem is that while the content was spectacular, and it was on point, and and I'm not going to name shame, because there's no point in all that kind of crap. That's not the point. The point I'm trying to make more than anything is this: you consume this great information because it does exist. Now there's some real crap out there too, but that aside, this is great stuff. But how are you going to go about it? Do you know how to go about it in terms of trying to get that into your game and develop it into your abilities and skill, and make this happen and go hit balls and range and course, and all of a sudden, well, that's what's missing from all of you. YouTube right here, right? Is you need someone who's not just been through the process themselves, and I've done it many times. I'm a tinkerer by nature because that's what I do now. Probably too much. It's really a detriment for a lot of us teachers. We overthink too much because that's our job. Anyways, but been through it. But more importantly, someone has been through it hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times with amateur players, recreational players, good players, even trying to achieve bigger goals, tournaments and pro golf and all. It doesn't matter. We know from experience what most players are going to go through. I may just be more willing to express it. That might be one difference. Or some, they don't know. I don't know. The intent of the video was very good and purposeful, and a lot of great information. And I love that part of it. It's good stuff. But how are you going to go about it? And especially if you're by yourself. And you have no feedback, and you have no, coaching, if you will. And, if you think about it, right? There's another point that I try to bring up a lot of times with people, and it should be, but you see even a tour professional's got a golf coach, right, and working on something. Well, they don't walk away after the lesson. I told one of these fellas on the demo day the other day, I'm like, well, here's the thing. I mean, if somebody wants to pay me like $50,000 a year, unlimited lessons, and I'll be there every minute that you're working on your stuff. No problem. Let's do this. You'd be my only student, basically. I might have a couple others, but for the most part, it's you and me. Let's go. You tell me when you're going to be working on stuff. I'll be there. I'm going to make sure. Nope, yep, nope, yep. That feedback, right? And so, pardon me, man. The pros have their coach there with them the whole time to make sure they're accomplishing what it is they're working on and doing it correctly and getting the feedback. What's missing in these videos is there's no coaching aspect, right? Because they can't. There's no way to deliver coaching. There's no way to deliver how to properly do this correctly, make sure you're on the right track, monitor it over time, connect the dots to the other skills necessary required to match it to make this work. And so even though he covered it pretty good in the video, and he did, that's the problem. He doesn't know how each of you out there might take this stuff and start working it into your swings and your current skill levels, and then see what it might be in 2, 3, 4 weeks down the road. And so that's an important part of a process of learning. I can evaluate a swing today and talk about 10 things. Okay, here's 10 things I see, and so on and so forth. And to get to where you want to be, that's what we got to work on, right? But from experience, I know this as well. In week 7, all of a sudden we're going to have some things that we've gotten better at, and out of nowhere, all of a sudden something pops up, and it's like, wait a minute, where did this come from? Why all of a sudden you doing, man? So we got to rework our process there and refigure out what's going on. So I posted like the little intro wording and dang, pardon me. You guys can go out and try to figure out who it is and all that stuff and find video and that kind of good stuff. And like I said, I'm not going to name shame, but because that's not the point. The bigger point is that, you know, it's great information and there's some of it that exists out there, but you still need someone to help you along the way, and especially someone that knows how to break down that video, how to bring it into context for you, and then how to proceed with you as an individual with your own customized process, if you will. How does it work for you? Because you have unique things about you. Your grip preference is slightly different. Your body type is slightly different. Your rotational abilities are slightly different. There's so many numerous possibilities of things that are different. And so if we don't match that correctly, then the good information isn't going to work. And I think that's lost way too much out there right now on the Twitterverse and YouTube, right? And anyway, so that's why I'm doing what I'm doing now, folks. That's why I partnered with the golf club, thegolfpub.com again, and this indoor facility. And you know, we got amazing tools up there, and there we can work. We can have our own private bay, and you know, and we can break this down, and we can start figuring out for each of you what specifically is important right now. What is the process we need to go through to get you where you want to be, and how do we start getting these things developed in your swing? Because every player over, you know, the past 20 years, however many it's been, thousands of players, I don't know, whatever, swings, there can't be more than just a tiny, you know, 10, 20, maybe, handful of amateurs that have low point anywhere near the position that this fellow's talking about. Good amateurs strike the golf ball to some degree, right? Because otherwise they wouldn't be good. But I can tell you from experience, and when you get the video and you break it down, they don't do it like them. And we can take it another step further. I had guys at the clubs that were, you know, back then, Nike Tour, so KFT today, KF Korn Ferry Tour, the minor leagues of pro golf, right? And they would just go to that level of play. I mean, at the club on the weekend, they'd play with the good players in the facility and shoot 65 and you know, be just fine without even thinking about it. And then they go out there to that next level of real professional golf, and they play pretty good. And they're just like, man, there are too many guys. They got another gear. They're at another level, right? And so that's what we're talking about here as well. Even good amateurs, while they possess the ability to go play the game at a good rate with what they got, which is great. That's why I probably wouldn't teach them much, because they're like, well, I don't need no improvement. I'm doing pretty good. Great, go play golf. You come back and tell me when there's something you can't do. That's when we start teaching you something. But even for them, if you want to break down their abilities and their skill levels, there's a reason they're not as good as them tour pros. And if you look at their low point in their golf swings, while it's still pretty good, it's still not where those players are. And so that's what separates them, right? So 30 index, really bad guy, golfer. Hey, you know what? If you play to a 30 and you enjoy the game, who gives rats patooey? That's another thing I hate. No BS in golf. If you're a 30 index, by the way, and you enjoy just enjoy playing. Don't worry about it. And if somebody tells you, hey, you need to get better, no, you don't. You don't need to get better until you decide you need to get better. It's BS. You have fun just playing. Now, when you're ready to get better, that's a different story. Anyways, 30 index, 20 index, 10 index, 5 index, 1 index, plus 5. There's still a gap between even the plus 5 and that tour pro out there. Now, that gap's a lot shorter. That's fair. But the point is that at each of those incremental different levels of players and abilities, if you're going to actually try to learn this whole low point thing, you're going to need some help. And I'll end it with basically this. What's worse is when I've seen players come in eventually because they said, well, you know, I was told to hit and compress the ball, and I was told to divot over here thing, and, you know, told. Hearing things or reading, which is kind of the same concept of learning. And then they went about it on their own, and then they got themselves into some really wild... I mean, I've seen things on camera. It would, knock your socks off what it looks like when people try to swing this old golf club at a golf ball. I've seen things that look painful. And the first time they see it, they're like, "That's me?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's you." And by the way, does that hurt? It's wild, some of the stuff you see with people swinging this old golf club around their bodies. Anyhow, so I'm not going to post the name. I'm not even going to give the links to any of this stuff. It popped out. It's one of those things that I see common very often. And again, good information, but you just got to be careful with this stuff, because I've seen what can come from this good information. While intent is there to be helpful and great, it's missing the most important part. You gotta have a good golf coach to help you with this, and that's what we're missing probably the most out there in general. So, lots of other stuff, but this is kind of a short, quick one this morning, and whatnot. And in our part of the world, spring break's coming up, so I'm gonna be kind of busy with some different things for the next week. But as always, if you have any questions, comments, absolutely throw them in there. Please let me know if there's something you want to be talked about or learned. I'll be glad to do it. And sorry, kids trying to barge in. I'll be glad to put up anything you want. But for sure, comments, questions, put them in down below. Smash that like button, like always. Subscribe. Share it out there on the Twitterverse and all the other, social medias you use. That helps me. And I can keep doing this and do some more. So hopefully also having some guests lined up soon to be coming in, and we'll get some good chats going and have some better info for you. But for now, this is Ryan Carpenter with No BS Golf, presented by P45 Knuckle Down Golf. Take care, folks.